Welcome to the GSD with Jenny podcast, where we talk about how to overcome all the stuff that gets in the way of getting shit done. Imposter syndrome, fear, money, relationships, networking, building businesses. We're going to talk to experts, or as I say, mavens, that provide practical and tactical advice on how to GSD. I'm your host, Jenny Buchholz, founder and CEO of Haven Creative. Now, I started my business with $300 in a laptop and grew it to a team of Haven mavens serving clients around the world and generating over 7 figures in revenue. We were named one of the fastest growing companies in Charlotte and 2024 Crowns of Enterprise Woman-Owned Business of the Year, and I'm incredibly proud of the success we've had and to be among the 1% of woman-owned advertising agencies in the country. But I still need help too. So I started this podcast with the intent to dive deeper into the things that hold us back from achieving our goals. So thank you for joining me on this journey to GSD. Let's get started. All right, well, welcome to the GSD with Jenny podcast. I'm excited today to have with me Chuck Cooper. Chuck is the founder and president of Whitewater Consulting and a distinguished 2-time author. His books, Unprecedented, Building a Multi-Generational Business on Trust, Respect, and the Value of People, and The Family Business Blueprint, Creating Your Succession Roadmap, have made a lasting impact on small, mid-sized, and family-owned businesses around the country. Chuck's passion lies in enhancing the performance and longevity of businesses, and as an entrepreneur himself, he is committed to guiding current business owners and helping the next generation step into leadership roles. Outside of his professional work, Chuck is dedicated to mentoring entrepreneurs and serving on the boards of faith-based nonprofits here in the Charlotte region. He's been married to his wife, Debbie, for 39 years, and together they enjoy traveling and connecting with people from all walks of life. Today, Chuck is going to show us how he got to where he is today and what he had to GSD in order to get there. Chuck, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jenny. I've been looking forward to our conversation, and I hopefully we'll have some nuggets of wisdom to share. If not, hopefully some people can learn from my past mistakes.
That's exactly why I started this podcast, Chuck, and exactly why to have you on, because we met on a podcast, right, talking about the importance of people and taking care of your people. But would love to hear, your perspective on how you got to where you are today, because selfishly, I brought you on so I can learn from you. So yes, hopefully people can learn from us too, but I want to know how you published 2 books.
To your question, that the book writing journey was something that, Jenny, honestly, 5 years ago, if you would have told me you're going to write a book, I would have bet everything I had. There was no way. I was not a book reader. I did not like to write. And it just so happened that, at the time that the pandemic hit, it gave me some extra time in my schedule to be able to do some things. And we've seen this, that the sign on LinkedIn and on social media that says, what are you willing to suck at to get better? That's what kind of inspired me to pick something that I wanted to get better at, which was to be able to communicate more effectively with my clients in the form of writing. And so I literally got up in January of 2020 and basically started writing every day just for about 30 minutes. And from that, that really led to the publishing of the first book. And what I found was the more that I did that, the more passionate I became about writing. And my mind literally would wake me up every morning at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 3:05 every day. And I would come downstairs to my office and begin to write. And it went from like 3 to 3:30, and then it was 3 to 5, and then it was 3 to 7. And so that has what ultimately has led to the writing of the second book, was just that passion. And so now my mind continuously runs on and comes up with other ideas on what I want to do.
So you set aside time for 30 minutes just to write whatever was on your mind, or did you have a theme in mind?
So I really was just focused on writing. So I did not have a theme in mind at all. So what I was really doing was I was just kind of recalling stories and memories from my childhood and just putting all of this down into a Word document. And as I went along, then, obviously I ran out of my own personal stories and I started thinking about things that were things maybe that happened a year ago or things that happened with clients, and started recreating those stories on paper as well. And so that was kind of what led to the full manuscript that came up for my first book. I sent that off to a couple of editors, and they're like, you've got some common threads that kind of go through this that are really applicable for today. And that happened to be, how leadership has changed since COVID, communication, HR best practices, company culture, and really the focus coming back onto the people of our companies.
So this is a period in time, right, where you have 5 generations in one workforce. So speak to me about the challenges that can create for companies.
So first, I think that the biggest challenge that we have, and this is hard for me to say and admit because I was one of these, is when I look at the younger generations, I wanted to paint the entire generation with a broad brush. So one size fits all. And the reality is, until I actually said, time out, let's go and let's just talk with some of these people one-on-one and get to know them. Then I started to see them for who they were and understand that each of them have got their own sets of gifts, and basically, they can contribute to our company or contribute to a client in a much more positive way when we can see them for who they are. So it ranges from the painting of the broad brush to the way that we communicate. So, as a baby boomer myself, I like to be able to pick up a phone and call somebody and talk to them and have that conversation. Whereas the younger generation, their preference is they would much rather just send a text. And so there's not a right or wrong. It's understanding who they are and what their preferences are, and realizing that as someone that has done something a certain way for decades doesn't mean that that's the best way or the right way for our organization to operate today.
I love that you keep talking about how you have to connect by speaking to each other. I think that we often do paint that broad stroke, and we forget if we can just talk to someone and get to understand their background and their preferences, we find out that we have a lot in common, right? In the end.
And I think that is a key point right there. We have to, when we truly sit down and talk, we will recognize that we have much more in common than we do that are differences. And if we will focus on those things that we have in common, I think we can move forward, whether it's in a personal relationship or as a company, we can move forward so much more effectively.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear some of your advice on, after you have the conversations, how do you create a good company culture?
Well, to start with, the culture at an organization starts with the leader. And I think that, again, when I put myself in that leadership role, Jenny, a lot, if I look back over the years, I was not the right kind of leader in many situations because I was so focused on, this is my lane, this is the way we do things. We just continue to do this over and over and over each and every day. And I think in today's world, that phrase of learning and growing is something that leadership is a journey that we go on. So it's not a destination. It's just a learning and growth that we have to really aspire to each day and challenge ourselves to become better. And by doing that, it allows us to be able to kind of, I guess what I would put this in the context of really the 5 C's that I refer to as 5 C's of leadership, which really play into the company culture. And it starts with communications. It means being out with your people. It means, talking with them each and every day and getting to know them personally so that you can actually have a connection, because when people have that connection, they will stay and they will remain loyal to your company regardless of whether things are good or whether they're not. So you have communication, then you have the connection. And again, the connection is really not just seeing those people for what they can do for you while they're at work, but understanding that when they come to work, they're bringing that personal side of themselves with them. There's no way that we can just cut a
robot,
have a defining or become a robot, and be able to say, all right, I'm going to leave my personal life at home. I'm not going to bring that in with me when I come to work. We're just not wired that way.
Absolutely.
And then it comes back to the commitment side. What are we committing to as the mission, vision, values of the organization, how we treat people, how we treat our clients, and recognize that our people are watching us as leaders on how we communicate with our teammates, as well as how we communicate when things get tough. Because for me, I know it's really easy for me for my tone to change when things get challenging,
Same.
and our people and our people are watching that,
Yeah.
and so we have to truly live that out. We have to live our values out with them, and I think that's
Hmm.
if we will do that day after day, I think that will start to create an expectation and also create that culture that we're looking for.
Yes. So, one of the things that I've often heard while working with company culture and leaders is that it sounds like handholdy, like icky stuff. And you talk about feelings and I don't want to deal with feelings. Is there a framework that you could go to or tools that you use to help leaders have good conversations?
I think a couple of things that I really encourage clients to do when they have that opportunity to have a conversation with their client or with their employees is really number one, if you're sitting at a desk, come out from behind the
Hmm.
desk and actually sit in a chair in your office. If the other thing that I'd love to see business owners do is when they want to have that kind of conversation is to be able just to go on a walk. It's amazing how the walls come down and we're so much more relaxed and transparent when we're outside. And the second thing is, or the next thing would be, is really to focus on asking questions rather than talking ourselves. Maybe if we would just ask questions and let them do the talking, we can learn so much more about them, and that starts to really you start to build that foundation for a real relationship with your people.
Yes, definitely. And it's okay to not have all the space filled, to wait and let them speak because usually they're
Yes.
terrified at first. Like, my boss is taking me on a walk. Oh, am I in trouble? I'm going to get fired right now, you know? So I agree with you. Going out for lunch, even somewhere outside, is a great way to connect with people and not make it so scary and intimidating. Um, Obviously, we're speaking from the entrepreneurial and the leadership side. What if you're an employee in an organization and you want to become a leader? Are there some tips or tools that you can share with our listeners on how they can become a leader inside an organization?
I think that when it comes to that, Jenny, it's really, a lot of that really does depend on the culture of the organization that they're a part of. But I think, when you're trying to kind of put yourself on that track to become a leader, I think one is you have to understand your why. I mean, why is it you want to become that leader, and recognize the skills and the gifts that you have and what you're able to bring to either to the company or to the relationship that you're trying to build. So my thing is, I think and I think John Maxwell says this, you can become a leader within the organization, regardless at the level that you're at. But if you're trying to actually aspire and trying to develop your skills, I think reading and continue to learn and grow. So reading books, listening to podcasts, challenging yourself to continue to grow. And then second is looking at the people in your sphere of influence and start to build those relationships. And again, it comes back to how would you, if you were to try to build a relationship with a significant other or a friend, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
You have to spend time with them. You ask questions, you actively listen to what they're saying and engage with them. And I think, again, you have to do that over and over and over to start to build that influence that you can have where you can actually speak into their life and help to become that leader that you're being called to be.
Yep. So it all comes back to communication and connection, right?
It really does. So much of it does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we overcomplicate that piece of it as whether we're a leader, whether we're just people. I think I was talking with a guy the other day, Jenny, and his comment was, Chuck, we have so many books and so
Yeah.
many podcasts out there on leadership. Let's just bring it back and we just need to understand how can we actually relate and connect with people.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we are inundated with content, and yeah, we're putting another one out right now with this, right? Which is also part of my head trash. Like, there's enough podcasts. Why do I even share this? But everyone has a unique story, and it's always fascinating when we do connect and communicate what we learn about each other.
It is. It is so true. So true. And it's hard for and I think it's hard for people to actually take that mask off sometimes and to be transparent and to be able to have that conversation in ways that makes an impact. I find myself a lot of times as a consultant communicating and talking to my clients versus taking a step back and just asking questions and sharing with them, this is something that I'm challenged with and I can't find the solution for. Can you help me with
Like,
this?
let's work together to solve it. Yeah.
Ex-
And like you said, how do we simplify the communication? And I guess it gets back down to is just ask, just have a conversation. Like, you have a problem, like you said, with a client or an issue, you just bring it up, be transparent, be radically candid, and work on that common theme together. And then you'll find a connection there.
I completely agree. I have a client right now that was they were concerned about losing people within their company, and they were concerned that uh, the impact that this was going to have. So they decided, rather than going out and talking with their people, they made a decision at the leadership level that they were going to give across the board pay raises to their people. Didn't ask, didn't try to figure out what's important to them, just gave an across the board pay raise. And when that happened, I asked the client, I said, I want you to go back this next week and I want you to talk to 5 people and ask them what's important to them. Because the reality is he gave across the board pay raises. Not one employee came back and even acknowledged that they got a pay raise. But what he found when he went back to them was they were like, we love working here, but I've got a child at home that has a special need. I need to be able to come in a little bit later in the morning. I'll stay later in the evening. The money wasn't the issue. It was just understanding what's going on in their personal life that can make things better for them. And so there was what he found when he went back was there was talked to 5 people and he had 5 different answers on what was important to them. So it comes back to your point of having that conversation. Just ask rather than assume.
Yes, 100%. That is, as a leader, I'll say that I've given out time off, or I used to give $100 bonus every 1-year anniversary. And I learned that wasn't really meaningful. And like you said,
Yes.
until I started talking to each person, in fact, we look at the love languages for guidance. So I'll say, what's your love language? Maybe it's time off. Maybe it's, recognition. They just want a shout out. And sometimes it is, gifts or lunch or whatever. But I absolutely agree with you. You have to find out and ask, because what happens, right? We do that. Like, he gave the raises across the board. He's probably feeling some resentment because no one said, hey, thanks for the raise. And then they're probably frustrated because, hey, they're not seen or heard about what they really want. Yeah.
That is exactly what happened. Yes.
That's a great story.
It was a good reminder to me that I need to be sure to share things like that with my business owner clients, just so that they don't make that same mistake.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about what you do for your clients when you come in. How do you help them create that culture and community?
So what's really interesting, Jenny, I started Whitewater 6 years ago, and it was really designed to be a company that was just going to be, it was going to be HR focused. And probably 85 to 90% of the work we do today is still HR, and everything from HR compliance to employee benefits. What's really been interesting though, is we see our clients reaching out with just a host of different, issues that they're dealing with. And the reality is it's a fascinating time to be in the HR space because the world's changed so much in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's as much as things have changed recently, the pace of change is going to continue to come at us faster and faster. So we have to be able to be adaptable and be agile as we move forward. So when you look at HR, what we're really finding right now, business owners are continuing to reach out to us for help with the HR compliance piece, just having us come in and do an audit for their organization to find out where the gaps are and then help provide solutions. So we can help them with that. But then the other thing is we have a lot of times we're having conversations around leadership development. And so we're taking managers and how do we go about developing them to become a better version of themselves and become a more effective leader. It plays right into the company culture piece, and then also into, as from a company as we grow, do I want to build an HR team in house, or do I want to outsource this?
Right.
And so there's just all of these different variations. And so what I thought was just going to be a really concise box of services we could offer, it continues just to become much larger than I ever envisioned. What I'm grateful for from that is that over the same time period, I've developed a value and I guess really a network of professionals that I've vetted, I trust to really become my solution providers for my clients. So I get the opportunity to go out and meet with the business owner, understand what's happening in their organization. They prioritize this list of gaps that they've got, and then I connect them with my network of providers. So they're getting a solution. The network is getting ideal clients brought to them. And then so everybody's happy there. And then I get to manage that relationship over the long term. And it's just something, it creates a win-win-win situation for everybody involved.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on the leadership development, is so important that, as business owners and founders, we hire people and then we throw them into leadership seats and be like, good luck. And exactly. The leader is now going, I have to manage people I've never managed in my life, and so it's not really fair to do that. And it's nice that you offer that leadership consulting. It's so important. Tell me 1 or 2 tips of how to be a great leader.
Well, I think, so especially when you're talking about leadership within the organization, I guess part of that comes back to, are we looking at mid-level managers going into a leadership role, or are we looking at the executive level and, continue to develop themselves? And I think if you look at it at the upper level, that I'm such a huge fan of peer groups, because I think that those leaders that are part of peer groups, whether it's Vistage or whether it's EO or whether it's C12, whoever that may be, it puts you into an environment where, again, you have a group of resources around you that you can go to, and you can learn and grow through those relationships that get formed there. So I feel like all of my clients that I talk to, I'm encouraging them to go check those organizations out, because I've experienced what the value that you get from those relationships and those being a member of those groups. So I think that's really important. But then second, from the mid-level manager, you have to realize that we have there's hard skills and there's soft skills. So you can be a really, really good salesperson and be a good individual contributor, but then you get promoted, you go into that seat of being a sales manager. Now you got a totally different skill set that's needed, such as soft skills. And where we have a lot of challenges it's just that emotional intelligence, being self-aware of situations, how your behavior and how your emotions are impacting the way that you're operating. I think there are things we have to start to really self-analyze ourselves in a lot of cases. And that's part of that learning and growing process. The other thing is within the organizations is being able to have a mentor program. So if you can have somebody that's a couple of steps ahead of you, reach out to them, connect with them, and develop a relationship there so that you can understand what they did to become successful. On the flip side, though, I think organizations, we have to be aware that reverse mentoring is something that
I was just going to ask you about that, because I wrote it down because I heard, working in a multi-generational workforce, there's opportunity lost when we don't mentor up. So I can learn a lot from a brand new graduate out of college on what apps are being used or how to be more efficient with AI. But go ahead and speak to that, because you're the expert, not me.
No, I think you're right on target.
Yeah.
I think there is so much value that's gained by the reverse mentoring. I was talking with a guy a while back, and he came to me. He's in his mid-50s, and he said, I feel like ageism is real at this point, because he goes, I'm the same, at the end of the day, I'm the same person today as I was 5 years ago, same person 10 years ago. But he had a specific skill set that he was bringing to his company. But what he didn't do, and this is so important as we're moving forward, is we have to get on that journey. We have to change our mindset to where we know we have to continue to become better ourselves. And so when you have the opportunity to mentor up, the younger people coming in, one is they bring new energy. They bring new ideas. For the baby boomers, a lot of us we were put on this track, and we basically had to follow step by step to be able to climb that ladder. These younger generation, they don't sit idle and wait on the next step. They
certainly do not, Chuck. They
will come knock on your door.
Can I be president tomorrow?
Exactly. And sometimes we look at that and we're like, how dare them?
No, it's okay.
Step up. Right. And the reality is, I'm thinking, kudos to
Right.
them. I
You have
mean,
the
for taking that
ambition.
initiative.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. So there is, but again, from the technology side, I think, and the apps, I mean, there is so much there that they can teach the baby boomers and the Gen Xers and even some of the millennials as well. So I think that there's just that mindset of everybody in the organization. If we've all bought into the mission, the vision, the values of
Mm-hmm.
the company, and we can pull the best skills out of each member and each generation and be able to mold that into our mission and our vision, people are going to be able to come in, they're going to be able to thrive. And as business owners, we're going to be able to actually be the preferred employer in your space. And so you're going to be able to attract, retain your people for the long term. And it's going to put you so much further ahead than those organizations where you have leaders that this is the way we've always done it.
Absolutely. I want to touch on, talking about the reverse mentoring or mentoring specifically. We have a remote culture. And one of the things I found is difficult to do is that mentoring. And it's things that happen naturally. Like, let's say when we used to have the water cooler chat, for instance, those of you that don't know what that is, right? You're having conversations around the water cooler. Well, now that we're remote, we're not hearing the conversations that are happening in the office. Someone can't hear how I would talk to a client, for instance, when they're first coming on board. Are there ways that we can be better mentors remotely?
I think so. I think for a subset of the population, yes, because what I found over the last couple of years is there are certain people that they have to be sitting physically in the same room across the table from each other to actually experience and feel that connection.
Mm.
But then there's another set of the people of our workforce that they are totally fine doing things virtual. And so it's a matter of, what's their preference. So I think as a leader, especially, we have to be adaptable and being agile to both sides of this. Um, so for example, I've got several people that I'm mentoring right now that are in New York, Texas, California, and the way that those relationships got started. And as far as the mentoring is, it got started just by literally having a quick conversation. And again, me reaching out and talking with them about what's going on in their world. They came back to me and said, I want to be able to capture 30 minutes or an hour of your time each month. And so we started getting on Zoom. And there are times where we will literally just get on, we'll do a happy hour online.
Yep.
And again, I know that was part of the things that we did when we had, in
COVID.
2020,
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
And then we kind of got away from a lot of that because a lot of people just didn't feel like it was a value. But I'm still a believer that there is great value in that piece of it. And it's just a matter of how we go about setting those conversations up. And again, how we go about listening to our people in those moments.
I'm going to go back to what you said earlier. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. The quick conversations, there's a quick connect. They can happen over Zoom in a 15-minute chat over, we use WhatsApp or we use the chat in our Google apps to just throw out a joke or a meme or how are you doing today or happy birthday. So yeah, there's some of the ways that we still connect remotely. And in our daily huddle, we actually practice gratitude. And that's been really fascinating for me. We started it during COVID as well. And just hearing what people are grateful for has helped me understand more about their personal lives. And so I really do love that moment of our huddle. But you also mentioned mission, vision, and values. Obviously, I'm a branding agency at Haven. We know mission, vision, up and down, left and right. But I think it's really important to the listeners to explain how that can set a course for company culture. Could you speak to that for a little bit for us?
So I think, Jenny, when it comes to, those aspects, what I find a lot of times is we've got we got everything up on the wall when you walk into a company.
Yes.
But then again,
it's not lived. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a total disconnect there. And I think that one of the best books I read on that topic was David Friedman's book, Culture by Design.
Mm.
And it really, what he brings it all the way back down to, as leaders, as a leadership team, we create the statements and we create the values. But then what kind of actions is it that we're really are there to be able to support the mission, vision, value statements.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally, he makes it as simple as when you get up in the morning, we don't have to think, all right, do I need to go brush my teeth this morning? It's just something that's a habit that we start to do. And so within his process, he comes up with these fundamentals that support the mission, vision, values. And they start every meeting within their company with a fundamental of the week. So you've got these fundamentals that are being taught every day, every week, every month throughout the year. And so regardless of whether you're the CEO or whether you're a brand new employee, you understand in a short period of time what those fundamentals are. And it really helps to support those three key things of mission, vision, values.
I love that.
Where I've seen the greatest impact is when you go into multi locations and you have that challenge of how do I carry my culture over to the other offices around the country. And this is a great way to do it.
That is really good. And it makes sense I've been to so many companies too that just have these values up on the wall. If I pulled an employee off the hallway and they try to ask them what's one value and they can't recite it, it's not alive and well, right? It's like, I'm not going to memorize a 4-page mission statement or vision statement, but I love speaking to the values in an actionable way, as like you said, the fundamentals on a daily habit or huddle or however you do that. Talk to me about hiring people and how you infuse the values in maybe the questions, or like how do you figure out the people are the right fit?
That is, and that's probably one of the greatest challenges we've got right now that a lot of companies are really struggling with. And I think it does come back to, again, as whether you're the HR person or whether you're the person leading the interview, to understand the depth of the values of the organization, understanding that culture, and then being able to really, again, be able to pull that out of your applicants, because a lot of times and I think you have to do an in-depth process there, because it's really easy for an applicant to say, this is who I am. But you got to be able to peel that layer and go deeper in that to find out who they really are.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it means taking those people out to dinner and in some cases, bringing their spouses along to see how that interaction and what they're, how they respond, how they show gratitude, or how they even recognize the person that's there with them.
A friend of mine also said, watch how they treat the waiter at a restaurant, because you're going to see a lot about their personal characteristics. And you're right. I mean, it's almost when you're hiring someone, it's a 30-minute speed dating. You're not going to really get to know them. Everyone's on their best behavior. They're going to tell you their best stories and give you their best highlighted referral, opportunities, whatever. But I do love, really understanding, again, what are the fundamentals of the core values of your organization, and then crafting questions that are around that to try to at least pull those things out of your applicant to understand them a little bit better. Because I know we're at Haven a firm believer that we can teach you skills, but I cannot change your habits and your behaviors. Right.
It's really that it is not worth the time and the resources to try to change somebody.
Yes, actually. And that's another great point. It makes sense, and people don't often do this, to spend the time in the beginning, because that one dinner or that extra few hours in the front end, it is a lot less expensive than hiring the wrong fit. Right.
It's very true.
Yeah. So how is it that you can find a multi-generational workforce that all agrees and have the same mission or the same values? It's possible, right?
It is absolutely possible. Now, it takes some work and some effort to be able to make that happen. And as you're asking the question, I'm just thinking about a client experience a while back that when I walked into their business, they had 4 generations and actually 5 generations in the workforce. But when you walked in their door, the owner said, I can just feel the tension as soon as I come in.
Interesting.
And so he goes, I don't know where the challenges are. Can you help me with this? And what we found from doing discovery with them was that there was in 2 different departments, in the sales department and the shipping department they had a larger number of people there that were in various generations. Both departments, they had younger generation people bringing different ideas, using different processes to be, like on the sales side, they were using a different They were using technology. They were using an iPad to show their presentation to their clients, and they were having a lot more success in that with doing that than what the older generation with the process that they used. Well, there became some resistance there because the younger generation is like, I'm having success. I think we ought to continue to build this into our sales team. The older people were saying, no, we don't want anything to do here. So what we ended up doing was we ended up bringing the parties that were involved into a room to have a conversation, to give them a chance to talk face to face and be able to air their differences. It helped a little bit, but not very much. So what we ended up doing is we ended up working with their HR team, and we built some surveys around things that and basically it was just a list of things that they enjoyed doing outside of work. So it was college football, it was wine tasting, it was bourbon tasting, it was exercise, it was travel. And what we had all the employees complete these surveys, and we started to build groups of people where there was common interest.
I love that.
The business owner came back and said, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to approve this for 4 months. So you got basically now through the next 120 days to see what happens. We went through, and what he agreed to do was he said, all right, I'm going to give 1 day a month. I'm going to give you all an hour to be able to put these groups together and let them spend time together. They're going to be paid for it. And we're going to see what comes from this. What happened was, for example, especially around the one incident was a college football. There was a group of South Carolina fans and it ranged from a 22-year-old all the way to a 70-year-old.
That's cool.
And these people within the company, they weren't seeing each other. They weren't talking to each other. They had a common bond here where over time they started building relationships. And so they would actually start to seek each other out when they came into work. And so from that, over a 4-month period, things started to change, and the owner's like, whoa, I'm seeing great results. We've got this for the next 8 months.
I love that so much. Yeah, because you gave them something to talk about, because sometimes people are just terrified or just don't think they have anything in common, going back to what we said in the very beginning. But once you learn one little nugget about someone that maybe you have in common with, now you can go to find that person and say hello in the morning.
Exactly. And they were actively seeking each other out.
I love that. So I'm going to steal that.
No, please. I mean, his comment was, he goes, mission accomplished. He goes, I could never have imagined that just by making that one change, that it would actually have that big of an impact.
I love that. So. Very good. The difference too is that there are a lot of companies that we found would go in and help, that they'll do surveys every quarter, every year, but then they don't do anything about it. So then what happens? The people are, why should I fill this out? They're not even listening anyway. I mean, so that's the second step in this. You can grab that data, but then you better take action on it. You better GSD, as I say, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Do something about it. And so is there a recommended cadence of getting that feedback, or a suggested, keep it simple kind of principle to gathering feedback from your people and taking action on it?
Well, that's the thing. I think you don't. I think you have to really kind of weigh that out. If you're having those constant conversations, so you've got a manager that's actively engaging with their people on a weekly basis, I think that from those conversations, there could be ideas that could be circulated as far as what could be done differently, or how we can make things better. I think from the survey standpoint, though, I would say do it twice a year.
Yeah.
And then if it's successful, then maybe pushing that to trying to do it maybe on a quarterly basis. But to your point, the reality is when we gather that information, we have to do something with it. The worst thing in the world we can do is to ask and gather information, even one-on-one, and then not do anything with it.
Yeah.
I've got managers I'm talking to regularly. I'm like, if you have an employee that says something to you and you commit to doing that, to at least checking in on that for them, go and do it and get back to them, at least give them an update on where things are, so they feel like they've been seen and they've been heard through that process.
Exactly, right? That's the seen and heard. I think at the end of the day, especially with the example you gave earlier about giving the raises across the board, is people just want to know that they're feeling seen, heard, and valued, right, in an organization. Yeah. And go ahead.
I said the only thing I would mention on that That is true regardless of the generations that you're from.
Yep.
Feeling seen, heard, and feeling valued.
Yep, that's a great point. So, what is one piece of advice from all the things we talked about?
You can't do it alone. You need to have a small circle, at least a small team around you with different ideas, different perspectives, so that you can flesh things out and really understand what is at the core of each of those. Again, what's at the core, your mission, your vision, your values, and what type of culture is that you want. So with all of that, I've seen so many times, and I'm guilty of this as well in the past, trying to do all of that by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, having people, multiple conversations, multiple ideas, that's probably going to get you a better result in a quicker time period if you do that.
Absolutely. And I was going to say earlier when you said having that community is so important, because you can't go cry to your people. I don't know how we're going to make payroll this week. Are we ready? Like there's a difference between being transparent and vulnerable, or being like completely, a basket case. Like you said, your emotions can kind of go up or down, and you don't want to put all that on your people, right? So.
No, I think a lot of times, Jenny, I think the vulnerability is something that I'm definitely an advocate for being vulnerable, but the way that I try to help my clients understand, you can be vulnerable to the point of promoting understanding. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be promoted. You don't have to be vulnerable to show everything.
Yes.
But just promote understanding so that they understand where you're coming from.
And 100% agree with you on that. And now, last but not least, everyone has a hype song, something that helps you GSD. Obviously, we know how you GSD because you got up every morning and set those goals. So that's super helpful. But what is that one hype song that you would share with our listeners?
And so I'm so old school. So the first song that comes to mind on that is "Eye of the Tiger." So I go back to the Rocky days.
Yes.
That's. But then I'm again showing my age here.
And you're not my first boomer on the podcast, just so you know.
Okay. John Mellencamp is. I was a huge fan of his. I mean, things from Small Town to Jack and Diane.
Yes.
Those type of songs are things that are on my playlist. And I just so you know, I am out walking or running 5 days a week, so I've got those on my playlist. Okay,
now I do want to go back to your habits. How do you fit that time in with everything else you're doing?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. Again, it becomes a personal why for me, because in full disclosure, both my parents passed away at age 67, 68. And they just did not take care of themselves health-wise. So when I went through that period, I decided then I was going to do things differently. So with my wife operating a virtual bakery out of our home,
yes,
I have to get up and go out for a run. But what I've found is also that time is a way for me to really get grounded for the day. And so the exercise really helps me a great deal in that. So my mornings start at 5:30 out on the road.
Wow. That is early. But I like what you said about having to tie it to your why, but the why has to be so driven with the emotional, right? The pain to change has to be less than the pain to stay the same, right? So it's like, all right, I know I need to do this. I got to change.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Chuck, so much for being on this call today and sharing your HR, your hiring, your leadership skills, all that with me. It's been a really great conversation.
I've enjoyed it so much.
Thanks for listening to GSD with Jenny. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend. For more ways to GSD, you can also find me on LinkedIn at Jenny Buchholz, where you can sign up for my Maven Mindset newsletter, or follow me on Instagram at Maven Jenny. Until next time, go GSD, Mavens.